Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this week. My name is Tanya, and I'm the Marketing Manager over here at Struxoft Solutions. Just for those of you who are new with us today, MWF, or Metal Wood Framer, is our automated Revit wall, floor, ceiling, and truss framing software for like-gauge steel and also wood modeling. Today's session will be led by our MWF technician, Susanna. Susanna will be walking you through how to model and quantify batt insulation using the foam tool within MWF. Just before we get going, I just want to remind everyone that at the end of the webinar, we'll be taking a few questions. So please feel free to type in questions throughout the webinar in the GoToWebinar dashboard under the Questions tab. For any questions that have not been answered, we'll make sure to get to them individually within 24 hours. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to hand off to Susanna now.
Hello, everyone. As Tanya mentioned, I'm a technician here at Struxoft Solutions. And just to reiterate what we're going to be looking at today, as Tanya mentioned, we are going to show you how to use the foam command to generate batt insulation in between your steel studs. But we're going to take that a little further by applying a material. You see that little image on my screen. We're going to apply that color as well as that hatch pattern. And then finally, we're going to show you how to create a schedule to be able to put this on your shop drawing so that you can quantify the amount of batt insulation that you require, not only in that panel inside of that shop drawing, but a global count as well of your of the total project. So let me just navigate here to my cover page and just show you what project I'm using. So some of you might be familiar with this. We typically use this on some of our demos. So it's just a little warehouse with some offices attached to it. So let me navigate here now to my exterior walls. So right over here, I'm going to put this batt insulation right here in our exterior walls. Typically, that's where we have them. And if you're like us up here in the Northeast, it gets cold. We need some of that insulation. So I do have my template map engaged here, right here. So this allows me to simply hit my quick create. And that's what I'll be doing here, hitting my quick create. And now it will get populated with those studs that are stipulated in that template, along with everything, the spacing and everything of that nature inside of that template. So currently, this template does not have the foam installation added, because I'd like to walk you through it and show you how to get that done. So there's my first panel in this project. I don't have foam insulation. Let me, batt insulation. Let me show you how to do that. Excuse me. Let's go to our Pro Suite tab. I'm going to go to the properties of this panel. And right here under the miscellaneous tool, we're going to navigate down here. Let me just open this up so we can see just a tad better. And we're going to come here into the foam. Now you notice if I click here, click, it gets grayed out. And that's simply because we have to stipulate the type of foam. Now, initially this was created for one of our clients. It wasn't initially created to generate batt insulation, but we're going to show you how to do that. I'm going to hit the style A, and now when I hit edit, I have this dialog box that comes up. Now we have a minimum length here in between our studs. Currently it's set to 3 inches, but if you wanted to stuff some insulation in between an even tighter space, you can put in a value of your choosing. I'm going to go ahead and put in 1/2 inch. And then here we have these holes. Now, we don't require holes. Once again, this is a tool for foam. We're just kind of hacking it to generate some batt insulation. So I'm going to turn these off. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Then I'm going to say OK, and then hit here and say OK. We're going to see that batt insulation get populated in between my studs here. And again, if you'd like this to be part of your template, you can definitely make this templatable. So each time you use this template on your exterior walls, that foam insulation will get populated each time. So we'll let that come in. And there you see it in between each stud. Actually, let me navigate to a floor plan so you can see that just a little bit better. Right over here. So you see in between each stud, I have that foam family that we're going to convert into batt insulation. So one thing that I'd like to bring your attention to as I select this foam tool is you'll see here that it is categorized under the structural columns category. So that is going to be important a little bit later on. But another thing that I'd like to bring your attention to is here the materials parameter here. So because it's in this first window, it is an instance parameter. So what that means for those of you using Revit, you understand the difference between an instance parameter and a type parameter. This means that if I want to put in here batt insulation, I have to do it every time this foam insulation gets populated. So what we, in effect, what would like to do is convert this parameter from a type parameter to an instance parameter so that it reacts globally inside of my project. So to do that, we actually have to edit the family. So you can either double click or come in here into your ribbon here and hit edit family. There we go. Now I'm going to open up the family editor here. And let me just grab this and show you what it looks like in 3D. There we go. So we're not too worried about these. These are the little holes. We saw that in that family. But if I look at the parameters, and here the parameters are here. So you see here family types. I'll click here. And there's that structural material parameter. I need to convert it from an instance to type, so I'm going to highlight it. And if we go all the way down here on this window, you see this little pencil tooltip will appear. Edit parameter, that's exactly what we'd like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click that pencil, click. And all we need to do here is switch it from an instance to a type. And I'm going to say OK and OK. Perfect. One more step that we need to do, we do have this extrusion, and this extrusion in and of itself also has a material. So what we need to do is actually associate this parameter. Now this little square here is going to allow us to do that. You see that little tooltip, associate family parameter. We're going to go ahead and click it, click, and we're going to associate it to that structural material. And then we're going to say OK. Perfect. That's all we need to do in this family. I'm going to load it back into our project. I'm going to have two types of choices here to override the existing version, but I'm going to choose the second one because we have changed some of those parameter values. So I'm going to choose the second one. And now all we've done is change that materials parameter from a instance parameter to a type parameter. Let me grab that. And then you'll see that it's no longer here in my first window. If I go into my edit type, there it is now here in my type parameter, in my types. So let's go ahead and assign a material here. So let's click a little here. You don't see the little 3 dots until you click there. There it is. And it's going to take us now to the material editor. So I am going to create a new material. Just down here, you'll see here. Let me see if I can move this mouse. Okay, so let's come down here. Here we go. Create new material. That's what we'd like to do. I'm going to go ahead and click that. So the default name comes in. I'm going to come here into the identity data. Sorry, it looks like my mouse is stuck. There we go. And then I'm going to come in here and change the name of that material from default to batt insulation. This is going to become important because we're actually going to do a material takeoff, and this is the name that we're going to pull for the information. So we're going to put that to batt insulation. Then we're going to come in here into the appearance. So into the appearance here, what I've done, let me show you. I went into Google, so I'm going to come in Google. I just Googled, batt insulation images, and I believe I chose this one down here. I just took this image and I just right-clicked, copy image, and I put it into an editor tool like Paint, or if you have Photoshop. And this, with these tools, you can actually get the RGB. So I've already gone ahead and done that. So let me go here into my Revit here, and I'm going to come in here into my color. And the RGB that I pulled with my editor was 202 for red. And then for the green, it was 137. And finally, for blue, it was 143. And you see that pink color come through. I'm going to say OK here. And also in my graphics here, make sure that you hit use render appearance. And this is for shaded mode. And that's what I'd like to do. So I'm going to say OK, apply, and OK. And we're going to see that pink color come through. Perfect. And I'll show it to you also in my exterior walls. There's that pink insulation. So at this point in time, some of you might be satisfied with just having this pink, but we're going to go ahead and take it a step further, and we're going to add some hatch patterns. Oh, before I do that, let me go back to my first floor plan. As you know, in Revit, here in the Annotate tab, there is a batt insulation line here. So if I grab this, I can tell it here to be 6 inches thick, because these are 6-inch studs, excuse me. And then I can come in here and start drawing the batt insulation in between these studs. The problem with this tool in Revit is that it is view specific. So if I go to the second floor and have walls on my second floor, I'm going to have to redraw this again. And it is not a model hatch. So if I go to my exterior walls, I don't see that hatch. So what I've done is, once again, I've gone into search mode here, and I've gone into the Autodesk forum. And there is actually some hatch patterns that you can download. So these are actually the same. So I have the same version here. I just prefer this one here because it's separate one from the other. It's kind of easier to see where one begins and the other ends, excuse me. So I'm going to show you how to grab these and actually convert them into a hatch pattern to be used for your installation. So what I'm going to do, first thing is, this one is the drafting and this one is the model. This is what differentiates them from each other. I'm going to grab this first one, just like this. And I'm going to hit my Control-C on my keyboard, so Control-C. Then I'm going to come over here and open my notepad. So let me just open my notepad here. And I'm just going to do a Control-V. Now I'm going to do a File, Save As. I'm going to put it here on my desktop, and I'm going to call it Drafting Batt Insulation. And I'm going to finish not with TXT, but with .pat, which is the hatch pattern extension for Revit. And I'm going to say save. And I'm going to close it. I'm going to do the same thing for our model hatch. I'm going to grab it like this and do Control-C. Open up my notepad once again. There we go. Do a Control-V. And this time I'm going to save it as, File, Save As. And this time I'm going to call it Model Batt Insulation. Perfect. Make sure you have that extension PAT. If you forget and it gets if it gets saved as TXT, you can always go back, rename, and just change the extension. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to close. Let's navigate back to our Revit. I'm going to grab that batt insulation. Once again, I'm going to go into its type properties here. Go back to that material, and we're going to edit it one more time with these hatch patterns. Perfect. So I want a model hatch for the surface pattern. So on the surface, I'm going to see that hatch, and I'm going to see it in 3D. So I'm going to click here. And then we're going to go to a model hatch here. And right down here, we have some options here. We don't want to edit anything because we don't have that pattern here. What we'd like to do is create a new one. So there's that tooltip, new fill pattern. Let's go ahead and click that icon. And then I'm not going to bother with anything here because we're going to do a custom one. I'm going to search. I'm going to browse where I downloaded that model one. I'm using 1/4 of an inch scale, and I've put in here 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to say OK. Now I'd like a cut pattern so that when I have a floor plan, I can easily know which walls have insulation and which do not. This will help me to determine that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the cut pattern here. The model one is not available because this is in a drafting mode. So once again, I'm going to hit that icon with the sun. Click here. Once again, hit custom. And once again, we're going to navigate to the drafting. And let me say open. And for the drafting one, I did a little bit of testing, and the best one for the 1/4 inch scale that I found was 002, but I invite you to play around yourself. And I'm going to say OK and OK, apply and OK. And now we're going to see that hatch pattern come through. There you go. And let me just isolate one just to show you what that looks like. So you see that, let me grab it, it'll be easier to spin around. That model hatch goes through in all of its faces. And if I go to my first floor here, oh, I forgot to delete that one. So we have that little hatch pattern come in. So now we can differentiate which walls in our floor plan have this hatch. Perfect. So we've shown you how to model it and how to apply a material and some hatch patterns. If you want to create this moving forward, we do recommend that you come in here and update your template. I'm going to do that now because I'm going to do one more here just to show you how we can differentiate from a total area count so that you can know how much batt insulation you actually need to order for your entire project, and then the ones that are specific to panels that show up in shop drawings. So let me go here into the properties. I'm going to go to template. I'm going to go to project, and this is the template we're referring to. I'm going to update it. I'm going to say yes, set as active, close, and OK. Perfect. It's going to update my template. So now moving forward, anytime I use that exterior wall template, that foam insulation will get populated and it's going to have that hatch pattern incorporated into it. So now we're going to talk about how to actually quantify this. So the first thing we're going to need to do is actually create a schedule. Now, typically in MWF, when you want to do these cut lists for your studs, typically you would do a quantities takeoff or a quantities schedule. So we come here into view, but this time we are not going to do a quantities because we're talking about a material, which is batt insulation. We actually want to create a material takeoff. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Click here. Now, once again, if you remember, the category is under structural columns. So I'm going to come down here and navigate to that category. So structural columns, and I'm going to call it batt insulation master BOM. And I'm going to say OK. Perfect. Now for the fields that we're going to enter, I'm going to enter 3 fields, but do keep in mind if you needed to bring in other fields that are here, you can always do that. But for today's webinar, I'm going to just call out the material name because that's what we actually want to create a schedule for. So let me come here to material name. Then I'm just going to come in here and bring in the count right here. And finally, I'm going to bring in the material area. So you know how much you need to order. So material area right over here. And I'm going to bring that in. So for now, all I'm going to do is this, and I'm going to hit OK so we can see that schedule get populated. And if you see here, because it is a material takeoff, I have the material of those steel studs under the structural column. Remember, this is a structural column category, and that's what we have. So what we'd like to do is just isolate for batt insulation. And we're going to use the power of Revit to do that. So I'm going to come in here into my filter tab right over here. And then for filtering, I'm going to use that material name right here. And I'm going to say equals. And then, of course, I'm going to equal that to batt insulation. Once I say OK, you'll see now that only the batt insulation is being quantified in this schedule. So I'm going to take this a little bit further. I don't want this, every count here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to this material area. So I'm going to go to formatting here. And I'm going to get a count here because I'd like to get an overall count of how much I have in this project. To do that, we're going to go to formatting, go to material area. And then here in calculation, let's calculate the totals. Perfect. Now let's go here into sorting and grouping. I don't want to itemize every instance, but I do want to have a total here, a grand total. So I'm going to come in here and say totals only. And I'm going to say, OK. Oops, wait, sorry. And one more thing I'm going to show you. So here you have an overall. But when I come here to sorting here, I also want to sort by material area. So that if I do have a material area, when I look in my panel, I can see how much are 34 square feet, how much are 31 square feet, and the like. So now I want to show you this schedule here. I have 667 square feet. So what I'm going to come here now into my first floor. I'm going to also quick create this little wall. And now you remember I did update my template. So here in my quick create, we should see now that foam insulation also be populated in this wall. And we're going to look at our batt insulation BOM and see how it has increased because as you will model this foam insulation, this batt insulation in between your studs, that BOM will grow with the amount of walls that get populated. But when we actually do a shop drawing, the only material that will be populated on your shop drawing is only the batt insulation that pertains to that specific panel. And I'm going to show you how to do that next, how to actually put this on some shop drawings. So we're going to let this finish here. It's creating all those studs as well as that foam insulation. And it is a little bit slow. We've been working from home since COVID, so my internet connection is not the speed that I'd like it to be. So there you have it. There's that foam insulation here. Now if I come in here into my BOM here, you see that it's increased. I have a little over 1,500. Now what we're going to do is actually put this on our shop drawings. So let me go here back to my first floor here. What we're going to do is we're going to navigate to our shop drawing settings right over here. And I have this demo one that I've set up for us, but I have not yet created one for our batt insulation. So that's what I'm going to do here. So to create a new view, you'll come in here to the little plus sign. There's that tooltip, create new. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And we do want to schedule, so I want it to be a custom schedule here, right over here. And I'm going to say OK. Now here, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it batt insulation. And in my view settings here, I really don't have to worry about any of this at all, because here in the data tab, I'm actually going to point to that master BOM that I just created right here. And I'm going to say OK and OK. Perfect. And I hit close. So let's go ahead now and blanket select this. Oh, sorry, my bad. I forgot to do one more thing. I forgot to actually assign that view to a viewport. So I'm going to go back here into my demo. These are single layer panels, so I'm going to navigate to single layer here. I'm going to double click on this sheet. Now what we have to do is this batt insulation view, we actually have to assign it to one of these viewports. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to put it in my upper left zone. There it is. I'm going to say OK. And now one more thing that I'd like to do before I generate that shop drawing is here the placement. Now I'm going to change this to bottom right simply because that's the zone that I'm looking in. I want it to populate from the bottom right going up. So I'm going to come here and choose both here, bottom right. And I'm going to say OK and OK. Perfect. Now we're going to come here and we're going to generate that shop drawing by clicking here and hitting OK. So once this shop drawing does generate, you're going to see we're going to have a schedule for that batt insulation that solely pertains to that panel that's on that shop drawing. But there's one more thing we have to do actually to our cut list. Now, if you remember, that foam insulation was under the structural columns category. And as a consequence, it's also going to appear in our cut list. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Right over here, there's my sheet, exterior 1. Let me double click. So there's our batt insulation here. But if you come in here, oh, sorry, I chose the wrong zone. Typically, it should have come down here, but we can correct that. But one thing that I want to bring your attention to is here the default foam that's appeared here in our cut list for our light gauge steel. Now, the reason that once again it's populating is because it's under the structural columns family. So we need to figure out how to actually filter this out. Now, let me show you how we can get that done. Let me just double click on this view. And this is the foam insulation, and what I'd like to do is see what kind of parameters it has for me to be able to distinguish it from, the columns and anything that is light gauge steel, really. And we have here a parameter called BIMSF description. We also have tag, but I'm going to use this BIMSF description to be able to filter this out from my cut list for light gauge steel. So I do have, much like I did for my batt insulation, I've used a template schedule that I've pointed to. I've also done that for my framing cut list, and it's right over here. I'm going to double click on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in that field. So let me bring in that field. It was BIMSF description. So let me navigate to where that is. Here it is. And I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to say OK. So there you see, every time you see default foam, that description is IP. So once again, using the power of Revit, we are going to filter that out to eliminate it from the schedule. So I'm going to have another filter here, which is BIMSF description. And this time I'm going to say does not equal. And I'm going to navigate here to IP. There it is. And I'm going to say OK. So now I've removed that from my list. The next thing I want to do is hide this. I don't actually want this to show up in my schedule. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit hide. Perfect. So let me go back to my floor plan. I do want to fix, though, that setting. Apologies for not choosing the right zone. So my batt insulation here, let me navigate here once again to my standard. So I'll see here that my framing cut list is on upper right, so I want upper left here. Upper left, batt insulation, and I'm going to say here none. So I want lower left. No, sorry, I want lower, just bear with me. Lower right, this is where I'd like it, sorry. And I'm going to say none, right here. And I'm going to say OK and OK, close. And once again, I'm going to regenerate that shop drawing using those same settings. And because I do have this override existing, it'll override any views that I've created in that previous run. That's a good thing. We don't want our project browser to get crazy with unnecessary views. And this time when we do populate our shop drawing, we will no longer see that default foam show up in our framing cut list for light gauge steel. And I also want to show you how in our master BOM for insulation, the values are for both panels that I have there. So let me open up that shop drawing once again. There you have it. I no longer have that foam, default foam showing up. And I have my batt insulation. And currently in this panel, I am using 667 square feet. And I've populated 2 walls. And if I come in here into my master BOM, if you remember from before, I have a little over 1,500 square feet so far. And as you populate all of your exterior walls with this insulation, this will grow. And once you finish your project, you can have a count of how much square feet you have in order to place, the material you need for your batt insulation. And there you have it, how to actually use the batt insulation to model and populate your panels with batt insulation in between your studs, how to apply a material and a hatch pattern, and finally how to quantify it, put it on a shop drawing for each one of your panels.
Awesome. Thank you, Susanna. So it looks like we have time to answer 1 or 2 questions. If you'd like to pose a question, please do so by typing in the questions tab now. And just while we wait for any questions to come through, I'd like to remind everyone that the recording of the webinar will be sent through tomorrow. As always, please feel free to share this recording with any colleagues, as well as if you'd like to set up a one-on-one demonstration, or if you have any follow-up questions after the session has closed, we highly encourage you to reach out to our team. Our contact details for our sales team will be provided with the recording. All right, I'm just going to look through some of the questions. All right, Susanna, quick question for you. Does this feature work for MWF Pro Wood?
Actually, it does not work for Pro Wood, and simply because wood has a volume. So if I just come here to my first floor plan here, I am running Pro Suite, so I have the ability to kind of, use wood and excuse me, steel. So I'm just going to generate a wall here. So I'm just going to use, and I'll show you why it doesn't work. Wood has an actual thickness, whereas steel is just, 1/32 or just, it's negligible. So let me just draw a wall here. And I'll show you why it doesn't work. It interferes with your studs. Now, if you want to squish it in, it's not going to be exact, but you can try it. So let me just hit create. I'm going to just use our default wood template. So to answer your question, it doesn't work because it overflows onto the wood. You can typically use it if you don't mind that interference. But once again, this tool was indeed created not to use for batt insulation, so just beware. So I'm just going to set it as active, close, and create. There we go. And I'll just show you what happens. So once again, that's why when I was describing the tool, it was really to be used in between your steel studs, and I'll show you why. So if you come here into the miscellaneous, let's see here if I change this. So if you're running Pro Suite, you'll get that foam tool, and if you're not, it won't even appear. And if I come here and do Style A, I'm going to once again remove these just to show you. So the short answer is no. And again, it's just because it interferes. So you see how it interferes onto the steel, to the wood. So let me highlight that to make that a little bit clearer. And this is why it doesn't. So if I move it over, you'll see it interferes with the wood. And that's why typically it's not a good idea to use it with wood. Thank you for that question.
Okay, great. Just to follow up to that as well, what about for multi-layer?
Oh, yes, you can definitely use this for multi-layer. So if I take this wall here, so I'm just going to take this wall, I'm going to quickly convert it into a multi-layer wall. So I'll come down here into the operations drop-down menu. I'm going to say add secondary. Once I add secondary, that wall is going to be converted into multi-layer. And of course, multi-layer only with steel. Once again, let me reiterate that. Let me come here into the wall properties. And let me see if I don't know if I have any sheathing templates in here. Yes, I do. So let me use this sheathing template here. I'm going to say select, put it on there, and I'm going to say OK. And then you'll see that it gets populated with sheathing. The only thing, though, if you are going to use it as a multi-layer wall, you might have to modify your shop drawing to be able to see the sheathing, right? Because you probably won't see the sheathing in your sheet because it's going to be behind, or actually, yeah, you might see it behind, but you might want to have another view just for your sheathing. That's the only thing that I would say. But yes, it does work in conjunction with multi-layer, and you can add sheathing. I would just probably add another view to stipulate sheathing, and then of course you can also have a sheathing schedule, and you can have all three on your shop drawing. Absolutely can be used with multi-layer.
All right, great. Thank you, Susanna. All right, that's just about a wrap for today. I know there's a couple of other questions that came through the chat. We'll make sure to get back to you by email within 24 hours. I just want to say a big thank you to Susanna and also everyone who registered for the webinar. We'll now be ending the webinar. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.